Okay, so today we're going deep on a concept that sounds kind of intense.
Yeah.
Envelop the enemy, the annihilation strategy.
Ooh, that's
It's from Greene's 33 Strategies of War,
right.
and it's all about achieving complete victory.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you do that is by surrounding your opponent.
Okay.
It could be physically surrounding them, like in a military sense,
Gotcha.
but it can also be mentally
Hmm.
or strategically through like other means.
Right.
The idea is that they just have no way out.
So you're boxing them in
Yeah.
completely.
Exactly.
And what we're really talking about here is
Yeah.
not just winning, one battle.
Right.
It's about making sure your opponent just can't come back.
Right.
They can't even fight back at all.
Yeah. It's like that knockout punch.
Yeah, it's
It's not just like winning on points.
it's making sure they can't get up again.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
Greene's big point here is that you got to avoid these incomplete wins. Like if you leave that opening for your adversary to like escape or recover,
Uh-huh.
then you might find yourself facing an even bigger problem later on down the road.
Yeah, you're just setting yourself up for round 2, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the strategy is
Mhm.
all about how do we close off all those possibilities.
Mhm.
So let's get into a really, really stark illustration of this.
Sure.
I think one of the best examples in
Yeah.
history,
Uh-huh.
we're going back to World War II,
Okay.
the Battle of Stalingrad,
Right.
1942 to 43.
Mm-hmm.
The German army was absolutely determined to capture this key Soviet city.
Right.
And what unfolded there is just like a textbook example
Yeah.
of the power of envelopment.
I think what's really interesting here is how the Soviets approached it.
Yeah,
So instead of just like digging in and defending every inch of the city,
right.
they actually kind of allowed the German forces to push deeper and deeper into the city. For anyone who's not like a military history buff,
Yeah.
when an army advances like that,
Hmm.
they rely on these things called supply lines.
Right.
Like you got to think of it like long roads.
Mhm.
They're bringing in everything the army needs to survive.
Yeah.
Food, ammunition, fuel, all of that.
Right.
And the further in the Germans went,
Hmm.
the longer and more stretched those supply lines got.
Right, so they become more vulnerable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And especially vulnerable on their flanks.
Their flanks.
Yeah, so the sides of their advance,
Yeah.
those are much less heavily defended
Right.
because they're focusing on pushing forward.
Makes sense.
But those flanks are crucial for
Yeah.
getting those supplies in.
Oh, I see.
You know,
Okay.
it's like their Achilles heel in a way.
So that's when the Soviets saw their opportunity
Exactly.
and they sprang the trap.
Yeah.
So instead of like hitting the main German force head on in Stalingrad itself,
Right.
they launched this massive counterattack, but they went around the city.
They cut off those supply lines.
Exactly. They cut those stretched out supply lines.
So it's like they drew a noose
Yeah.
around the entire German 6th Army
Wow.
and parts of their allies too.
So not only was it a brilliant military maneuver,
Yeah.
but I imagine it was also this like huge psychological blow.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, can you imagine being a German soldier in Stalingrad?
Mm-hmm.
You're surrounded.
Yeah.
You're cut off.
Your escape route is gone.
It's the middle of winter.
Brutal Russian winter.
Yeah, it must have been just completely demoralizing.
Oh yeah, it was a complete breakdown of morale.
Yeah.
And that's what really accelerated their defeat.
Right.
It went beyond just like, them running out of supplies.
Yeah.
It was that psychological impact.
Yeah.
And it all culminated in a just devastating surrender.
So the big takeaway from Stalingrad
Mm-hmm.
is when an enemy is really, truly trapped,
Yeah,
they're done.
they're done.
They can't move. They can't get resources.
They have no options.
And that psychological impact
Yeah.
of knowing there's no escape.
It's crushing.
Yeah. Utterly debilitating.
Totally.
So Greene lays out some core principles
Mm-hmm.
for this envelopment strategy.
Okay.
And the first one is total control.
Right.
Once you've achieved that encirclement,
Yeah.
your opponent is basically in a box.
They're in a box. They lose their freedom of movement.
Right.
They can't retreat.
They're stuck.
They're stuck. They can't really influence the situation anymore.
Yeah, they've lost all agency.
Exactly.
And I guess that leads directly to the second principle,
Yeah.
which is that psychological pressure,
Mm-hmm.
that feeling of being completely surrounded.
It's like you said, imagine being in that situation,
Yeah,
knowing there's no way out.
it's terrifying.
Panic is almost a given.
Yeah.
And panic leads to mistakes,
Right.
bad decisions.
Yeah, you're not thinking clearly,
Exactly.
which just makes the situation worse.
It just speeds up the collapse.
Yeah, it's like that feeling of being cornered in a negotiation.
Oh, yeah.
You just start making
Yeah, you
concessions.
just want to get out of there.
You'll do anything just to find a way out.
Yeah, any way out.
And then I guess the final principle is complete dominance,
Mhm.
right? When your opponent has nowhere to go,
Yep.
when they've lost all capacity to resist.
Their will is broken.
Victory is pretty much guaranteed at that point.
It's not even a question at that point.
So we've been talking about envelop the enemy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, when they hear that phrase,
Mm-hmm.
they automatically think of military battles.
Yeah, of course.
But this idea of like cutting off options, this has applications way beyond the battlefield.
Oh, yeah, way beyond.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those.
Okay.
So like in the business world, for example,
Mm-hmm.
imagine a company
Okay.
that manages to secure these like exclusive agreements
Uh-huh.
with all the major distributors for its product. So they're the only ones who can get that product to market.
Right. They've locked down the supply chain.
Exactly. Their competitors might have an amazing product,
Yeah.
but if they can't get it to consumers,
Yeah.
because this one company controls all the avenues to market,
Right.
they're basically enveloped.
They're done.
They're done. They can't survive.
It's like they've taken control of the whole ecosystem.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They control the whole ecosystem that their competitors need to operate in.
Exactly.
And we see this in leadership too, right?
Yes, sure.
Like think about those individuals
Locus.
who cultivate influence across multiple key areas.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they build strong relationships with different departments, different
Yeah.
organizations.
Yep. Stakeholders.
Yeah, they get all those stakeholders on their side.
Huh.
And that makes it really difficult
Yeah.
for anyone to challenge them.
Yeah, they built up this network of support.
Exactly.
That's very hard to penetrate.
It's almost like they're surrounded by allies.
Right.
So no one can get close enough to even try to take them down.
They've made themselves basically untouchable.
And this applies to our personal lives too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like think about someone who
Wow.
has a diverse set of skills,
Mm-hmm.
a strong network of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
If they hit a setback, like say they lose their job,
Right.
they've got other things to fall back on.
Exactly.
They're not just relying on that one job.
Yeah, they've got options.
They've got multiple escape routes.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not going to be completely devastated by that one setback.
They're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Yeah, diversification is key.
Right. So it's not just about being good at one thing.
Right.
It's about having multiple lines of defense and
Yeah.
offense
You got to be able to adapt
in your own life.
to different situations.
Yeah. So in the strategy guide, Greene uses Google as like this modern example
Oh,
of
yeah.
envelopment in action.
Google's a great example.
And I think it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, Google didn't just set out
Mhm.
to create like a slightly better search engine.
Right.
They wanted to dominate the entire internet experience.
They wanted it all,
They wanted it all, and they pretty much have.
pretty much.
I mean, think about it. They control search,
Right.
which is like the main way people find information online.
Yeah, the gateway to the internet for most people.
Exactly. And they have this massive advertising network
Uh-huh.
that basically underpins the whole digital economy.
Yeah, a lot of websites rely on Google ads
Right.
to make money.
And then they're also leaders in data analytics,
Mm-hmm.
which gives them incredible insights into user behavior.
Yeah, they know what we're doing,
They do everything we're doing online.
pretty much,
And now they're at the forefront of AI.
which is the future.
Right. AI is shaping the future of technology.
Yeah, and they're right there leading the charge.
So they've got all these different layers of control,
Right.
and they all work together.
To create this, like, unbreakable dominance.
Yeah, it's a self-reinforcing cycle.
So if a competitor tries to challenge them
Okay.
in just one of these areas,
Yeah.
like let's say they come up with a new search engine,
Right.
they immediately run into all of Google's other advantages.
Yeah.
Google can use its advertising platform to promote its own search.
Right.
They can use their data to refine their algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
They can use their AI to enhance their search results.
Yeah, it's like being attacked on all sides
Look,
at the
exactly.
same time.
They haven't just won a single battle.
Right.
They've taken over the whole playing field.
The whole board.
So no one can really compete with them effectively.
It's very hard to even get a foothold.
So when we're thinking about how to apply this strategy to our own personal challenges,
Okay.
I think it really comes down to
Yeah.
identifying those escape routes
Right.
for whatever we're facing.
So like what are the ways that the challenge could take like get around our efforts?
Or, come back even stronger.
Right.
We need to figure out what those escape routes are.
And then block them.
And then shut them down.
Shut them down completely.
Yeah. No way out.
And Greene also gives us this really important warning about the dangers of half measures.
Right.
And I think this is something that people don't always think about.
Yeah. It's easy to get complacent.
Yeah.
Once you get a little bit of success.
Right.
But you got to see it through.
So the example he uses here is the Roman destruction of Carthage.
Oh, yeah.
So this was this long conflict between Rome and Carthage.
The Punic Wars.
The Punic Wars, right?
Yeah.
These two ancient superpowers. And Rome won multiple major victories.
Right.
But after each one,
Yeah.
they kind of let Carthage recover.
They didn't finish the job?
They didn't completely wipe them out. They didn't fully envelop them. And that turned out to be a big mistake.
Yeah.
Because Carthage was able to rebuild and become a threat again.
And they came back with a vengeance.
They did so even after the Second Punic War.
Right.
When Hannibal was defeated. Carthage was still a major commercial power.
Yeah, they were still a force to be reckoned with.
But there were these influential voices in Rome.
Okay.
Like Cato the Elder, who's famous for that line, Carthago delenda est.
Carthage must be destroyed.
Carthage must be destroyed. And he ended every speech with that line.
Wow, every speech.
Every speech.
He was serious.
He knew that as long as Carthage existed, Rome wasn't truly safe.
Right. There was always that potential for conflict to reignite.
And of course, that's exactly what happened in the Third Punic War. And this time, Rome learned its lesson.
They weren't messing around.
They didn't just defeat Carthage. They completely obliterated it.
They wiped it off the map.
They burned the city to the ground. They even plowed salt into the earth to make sure nothing could ever grow there again.
So they were making a statement.
They were, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a really, really stark example of what can happen when you don't fully envelop your enemy.
When you leave that possibility for them to come back.
Right. You give them that opening.
You leave the door open, just a crack.
And they can slip back in.
And it comes back to bite you.
And I think we see this in less dramatic ways all the time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like in business. If you weaken a competitor, but you don't drive them out of the market completely, they might regroup.
Yeah.
They might come back even stronger.
With a new strategy.
Yeah.
New funding.
New products. Or in our personal lives, we might have like a bad habit that we try to address.
Yeah.
But we don't really fully deal with it.
We don't get to the root of the problem.
When we don't envelop it.
Right.
And then it just comes back.
It rears its ugly head again.
When we're stressed or whatever. So I think the lesson here is you got to be thorough when you're facing a significant challenge.
You can't just do the bare minimum.
You can't half-ass it. You got to go all in.
All in.
But Greene also cautions against overextension.
Right.
Like, don't spread yourself too thin, trying to envelop your opponent.
To be everywhere at once.
And he uses Napoleon's campaign in Spain as an example of this.
Napoleon, that's a good one.
So Napoleon was this brilliant military strategist, but he made some mistakes.
Oh, it did.
And in Spain, he tried to control the whole country.
The whole thing.
All at once.
Yeah, he wanted to envelop all of Spain simultaneously.
But he didn't really account for the Spanish resistance.
Right.
They didn't fight the way he expected them to.
They weren't playing by his rules.
Exactly. They didn't engage in these like big set-piece battles.
Right.
Where Napoleon's armies could easily surround them.
Where they excelled.
They were like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. We're going to fight a different kind of war.
We're going to do guerrilla warfare.
Guerrilla warfare, hit and run tactics.
Yeah, ambushes, sabotage, constant harassment. They just refused to be pinned down.
They were like ghosts.
And Napoleon's forces, they got spread out all over the place.
Trying to control this vast territory. Yeah. Constantly reacting to these like little attacks.
They couldn't focus.
Right.
Their supply lines got stretched. They were just exhausted.
They got bogged down.
It became this like long drawn out conflict that really drained Napoleon's strength.
It was a huge drain on his resources.
Yeah. And it actually played a role in his eventual downfall.
Wow, so it backfired on him.
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
So the lesson there is you got to make sure that you actually have the resources to close the trap.
You can't overextend yourself.
You can't spread yourself too thin.
Right.
And you got to make sure that your opponent can't just slip through the net like the Spanish did.
They found a way to resist that envelopment.
So how do we find that balance then?
That's the question.
Yeah. Between being comprehensive, but not overextending ourselves.
Right.
I think it comes down to careful planning.
Yeah.
Assessing your opponent's capabilities, understanding the environment.
The landscape.
Yeah, both literally and metaphorically.
Right.
And being realistic about your own resources. Don't try to do too much at once.
Right.
And Greene also emphasizes patience.
Patience is key.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to wait for the right opportunity.
So let's talk about some practical steps for applying this strategy in our lives.
Yeah.
So the first step is to close off those escape routes.
Right.
Like we were saying before.
No way out.
Make sure there's no easy way for your opponent or your challenge to recover.
To get around you.
Yeah. Or to just like go around your efforts. Yeah. You got to be thorough.
Be thorough in your envelopment. And then the second step is to control multiple fronts.
Right.
So this doesn't necessarily mean like literal attacks.
Yeah.
But it means engaging the challenge.
From different angles.
From multiple angles. Yeah. So in business, this might mean addressing different aspects of the market simultaneously.
Like marketing.
Yes.
Product development.
Product development, pricing, distribution.
Yeah, you got to cover all your bases.
And in our personal lives, it might mean tackling a problem.
From multiple perspectives.
To different angles, yeah.
Like if you're trying to get healthier.
Yeah.
You might need to address your diet, your exercise.
Your sleep habits.
Your stress levels.
Your mindset.
Yeah, it's a holistic approach.
Exactly. So the third step is patience.
Right.
Don't rush the envelopment. Wait for the right moment.
Wait for your opponent to make a mistake.
Yeah, when they're vulnerable. Or when the circumstances are in your favor.
And then once you've started the envelopment, you got to apply pressure.
Right.
Keep the pressure on.
Don't let up.
Don't let them breathe.
Yeah, make them feel the heat.
Because that pressure can force them to make mistakes.
Right. They start panicking.
Yeah, they start making bad decisions.
They make rash moves.
Which just weakens them further.
Exactly.
And then finally, you got to ensure complete victory.
Right.
Don't leave any loose ends.
Tie up all the loose ends.
That's sure the threat is completely neutralized.
No chance of a comeback.
No chance of a comeback. Greene uses Amazon as an example of this in the business world.
Oh, yeah. Amazon's a great example.
Because they haven't just dominated online retail.
Right.
They've expanded into so many other areas.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. They've got cloud computing with AWS.
Right.
They've got streaming with Prime Video. They're investing heavily in AI. And they've built this incredibly sophisticated logistics network.
So they control so much of the online world.
They control so much of the economy. I mean, it's not just online anymore.
They're in the physical world, too.
They're everywhere,
With their delivery trucks in their warehouses.
So if a competitor tries to challenge Amazon in just one of these areas, they're screwed.
They're going to have a tough time.
Because Amazon can use all of its other advantages to crush them.
It's like they've got this arsenal of weapons.
It's got all these different ways to fight back.
And they're not afraid to use them.
So they've created this incredibly powerful strategic advantage.
Yeah, it's really hard to compete with them.
By controlling all these different parts of the economy.
Like they've enveloped the entire market.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into envelop the enemy, I think the key message here is that partial victories are dangerous.
Right.
They might feel good in the moment, but if you leave your opponent any room to recover, you're just setting yourself up.
For more trouble down the road.
For a bigger fight later.
Yeah.
So the goal is complete domination.
Total annihilation.
Total annihilation.
Yeah.
Of the enemy's ability to resist.
And this doesn't just apply to military conflicts. This is a framework for thinking about any challenge.
Any obstacle.
In your life.
In your career.
In your relationships.
Yeah.
So the next time you're facing a challenge, ask yourself, am I leaving any escape routes open?
Right.
Or am I really thinking strategically about how to completely envelop this problem, this enemy?
How do I achieve total victory?
Exactly. Because when you envelop the enemy, when you achieve that total domination, you create a position of strength that's incredibly difficult to overcome.
Yeah, you're in the driver's seat.
And that's the power of envelop the enemy. That's the power of annihilation.
The annihilation strategy.